Appreciate you guys coming in. We'll get the banners up. Go ahead and put a Q in front of your comments. And for all of you that don't know, the reason why my YouTube channel is not on here is because I got a community guideline strike, hard strike, and I will be in the doghouse for another week and a half. So coming back around it, but I'll see you guys back on YouTube, and then we are going to start rolling over to Rumble. We would appreciate anybody that wants to go follow us on Rumble, because the drug companies and things don't like us talking about their stuff. So we're going to do that on Rumble.
I think I'm going to have to make the switch to Rumble too, because that's a lot of what we talk about.
For sure.
So, yeah.
Josh says howdy from North Carolina. Prayers for you guys, Josh. I know you guys are suffering with that hurricane. Why do so many people say carnivore is not sustainable? I'm thinking of trying it. Because people are, and I mean, this is just my honest truth. What I believe is because people are addicts. People are addicted to sugar. People don't understand how addictive sugar is. And so until you're free from addiction, you don't know what sustainable really even is. The idea of not having your drug seems unsustainable. But when you're free and you don't have any eating disorders or any addictions, because your hormones are right and you're not addicted to these short cycling of endorphins all the time, it's the most sustainable thing I've ever done. How about you, Chad?
Yeah, how is the standard American diet stable? Like, or how is that sustainable?
Right.
In my sense, because like 50% of the American population right now has diabetes or pre-diabetes. 9 out of 10 people are estimated to have a metabolic disorder. You're like 9.5 out of 10. You have a 95% chance in your life of developing a life-altering illness or sickness. So, like, what do you mean it's not sustainable? You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah,
the standard American diet's obviously not sustainable. The likelihood that you're going to have an eating disorder, the likelihood that you're going to be overweight or deformed, the likelihood that you're going to become so ill or develop cancer, or what, all the plethora of things that we now have thanks to the standard American diet. Yeah. So which one truly isn't sustainable? Right. So that's my opinion. So it's like, for me, it's like, I can't afford not to. You know what I mean? Yeah. I was so sick before. I was on the path to death that the idea of not doing carnivore now to me is ridiculous, just because I was trapped in depression and anxiety. I was trapped. And now I can do all those things that I've broken free. So for me, I view the standard American diet as not sustainable. And this way of life and this way of eating I've been sustaining, and I cannot imagine myself doing anything else in the long run. So
for sure, 100%. And I think that's really it. I think that what I see that everybody has in common is you have to, or you don't have to, and I would love people to see it, but what's common is people's situation has to get bad enough where that it has to equal the amount of uncomfortable or the amount of pain and suffering that quitting being an addict causes for a short period of time, right? It has to outweigh it. And then people fight it finally, because we try to fight it. And this is why, I'm trying to choose my words here so that we go and get another stream taken down. But this is what I have against the standard American diet is that, for anybody that doesn't know, I was 600 pounds when I was 14. So I've been fighting this my whole life. And I mounted many, many attacks against the weight and the eating and the problems and the depression and anxiety many, many times. And I did it, the way that we're supposed to do it. I went and saw a doctor, went and saw a nutrition coach, a dietitian, I listened to them about their medicine and, moving more and eating less and eating more fiber and eating low fat foods. And I did all those things and they did not work. And that would spin me off into a bad mental spot because, like I've mentioned this Chad before, one of the problems is you start making a monster out of this opponent you have because you keep letting it win. You keep letting it win. And all of a sudden it's just this hole that you're in and that you're just fighting, you're just always fighting this monster that you feel like you can't beat because it's just owned you so many times. You've won up against it. You won as long as you could. And then you get, annihilated and then it kind of owns your mental space and you go, well, I'm weaker than everybody else. I'm broken. I'm defective, whatever. I can't, there's something wrong with me because so many people do this and it's easy and I can't do it or whatever. But the reality was the entire time it's that the solution was wrong. The solution was wrong the whole time. The food was wrong. The approach was wrong. Trying to, they just didn't understand it. And what they did understand was being blocked by greed and big companies that want to make money off of this. We shall not name names just yet, but we will on Rumble for sure. And when we're exclusively on Rumble, so that's coming. But at any rate, once you do this, you find out how just sustainable it is because your hormones heal and your metabolism heals and your metabolic system heals. And all of a sudden you get free from those addictions. And then when you're not addicted to stuff and you don't have anxiety and depression that you're always trying to treat with a dopamine fix, and you finally get really calm and all of a sudden, you're not ruled by these drug fixes in the food, you just, you have a real constant sustainable strength about you. And for me, it's the most freeing, sustainable thing I've ever done. It's
Absolutely.
yeah,
You and I talk about this a lot too. Well, I guess I talk about way too much, but you have two versions of freedom. You can have the freedom to eat whatever you want, and then your life is going to be miserable in terms of being lethargic, tired,
mhm,
brain fog, anxiety, fat, knees aching, back pain, autoimmune issues. So, and that's going to be your life. And so, yeah, sure, you have freedom when it comes to putting in your mouth, but then what is a freedom of your life afterwards? Or you can have discipline of what you put in your mouth, and then you have freedom of life. You have like I remember one week I like didn't get out of bed. Like it was so bad. I was just like shaking and I was like, what is happening to me? And then I went, I tried all the diets, I tried all the medicine, and then all of a sudden I go carnivore and I was able to take a one-way trip to Brazil. You know what I mean?
right,
And
for sure.
so I think that was it's really cool how much freedom I had because I was like in a prison, but I was eating whatever I wanted. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Right.
what's the tit for tat there? So yeah, I agree with you. The monster in your head, and every time you avoid the monster, it gets bigger and stronger.
Yeah, 100%. It does. And Jordan Peterson always calls it the dragon, but yeah, 100%. And that's why, well, one of the reasons that I like taking Jordan Peterson's approach to making new habits and getting rid of old habits was because I knew that from experience, from failing so many times, that if you make your goals too big and you bite off more than you can chew, then you fail because it's based mainly on not on your strengths but on willpower. And then once that thing's beaten you, all of a sudden it's this mental game now because now you're always fighting something that was bigger than you the first time.
Yeah.
And so I always hated that approach. And this approach with having proper hormones and healthy body and just a way calmer mind and way more patience due to just being healthy and healing. Now, you know, I have no more addictions or compulsions. Like I'm completely 100% in control of every, every addiction and compulsion I had before, as far as sugar, eating, and nicotine, gambling, all these things that plague me, they're just gone, you know?
Mhm.
So to me, that's far more sustainable than being able to not have to say no to processed foods.
Exactly. And the other interesting thing is we have to face a reality of like what our ancestors ate, right? And
For sure.
so like if it was sustainable for our ancestors, why wouldn't it be sustainable for you? The only difference between you and them is you have all the options. So you just
Right.
have to have the discipline to say no. They didn't even have an option. So the thing is obviously it's sustainable. So you have to reevaluate where you are in the world. And I know this is kind of a weird offshoot, but I coach Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and I coach a lot of kids, and we have a huge kids class. And it's funny because I treat the 13-year-olds as if they were adults. And I rarely have parents ever do this, but they'll ask me, like, man, you're pretty hard on them. I'm like, yeah, dude, 13-year-olds were adults for the longest time. They, you know what I mean? Like they
Yeah.
had to raise families and raise farms and go off to war and do all these things. They were expected to contribute at an adult level. So like um we kind of take the modern society as if it's supposed to be the biological norm. And
Mm,
I think the modern social norms go against the biological norms. And so, yeah, just because it's normal around us and the powers that be and the money that be makes the social norms, does that mean that's biologically sound? Do you know what I
right.
mean?
I
And
do.
so, I like right now, uh, there's a hookup culture. I think that is not biologically sound for humans, but that's like the norm. And a
Right.
lot of people are sharing the most intimate parts of themselves with strangers just to gratify themselves for that moment. And they're losing a lot of who they are each time they do that. But that's culturally normal. But I think that's physiologically and biologically out of the norm. So, like, for example, how long is hookup culture going to be sustainable? How long are broken up families going to be sustainable? And it's kind of like the same question. How long is a standard American diet going to be sustainable? Right. Back then, they had no other option, but now you do. So I guess the thing is, you have to have the ability to have the discipline and say no to the poison. That's the
Yeah,
only difference.
for sure. For sure. And we're seeing it though, right? Because we've done this experiment. We've seen relationships, the nuclear family, marriage all break down. We've seen society kind of definitely eroding away, and now it looks like it's making a comeback. People are waking up anyways and
Yeah.
going back in the right direction. And we've seen health and the diet do that same thing. And so now there's kind of a reckoning here that's we're seeing, which
Mhm.
is how, we're seeing the death throes, or at least, some lashing out from these systems that have been trying to maintain power. That's how we get hard strikes and get bans for
Yeah.
speaking words on the internet that people don't like. You know what I mean? And not people, the people need to hear them. Speaking the words that saved our lives, changed our lives when medicine and doctors couldn't. But speaking those words somehow is a proven path out of hell. For me
That,
personally, for you personally, that's dangerous. You know what I mean?
that's the most perfect way to put it. The way you just said it. The thing that saved my life when the doctors couldn't, when the medical professionals couldn't, when the specialists couldn't, when the thousands of dollars I put into anyone from gastrologists to lipidologists to freaking chiropractors, they couldn't fix me. Yet a simple diet that's considered unsustainable is the thing that is the radical thing. In addition, gets you banned when you speak about it on social media.
Right. And then you talk about it and you just literally explain. That's what's funny is, I've had people come on here, and who knows, this is the internet. It's full of trolls, but I have people slide in to our comment section, our chats, and say, what you're saying is dangerous. And I'm a nurse. I'm this, I'm that. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm Todd, who's alive right now because of what I'm telling you. So I don't care what your credentials are. I'm not coming at this from an ideological standpoint. I'm coming at this from going through the hell and coming out the other side and having this thing save my life. So I really don't care about your ideological idealism or your, you know, or your
Yeah.
degree or whatever. I don't care. What this isn't propaganda. This isn't hyperbole. This is actually what happened. This is the accounting of what I've gone through, what made the difference, and why I think it made the difference. And I'm allowed to say that. But boy, if you do, all of a sudden, now it's dangerous misinformation. You know what I mean? This is why we cannot have gatekeeping on speech. We cannot have gatekeeping on words. We cannot have forced utterance, laws of forced utterance, because that's how they get to control things and push
Mm-hmm.
very dangerous propaganda.
You, you know what you're saying right there? I think I told you this before, but how do you tell what a good golf swing is? Right? So it's like there's two people who could tell you, or two ideas rather, that could tell you what's a good golf swing. And so one person will tell you, well, you got to have, you got to have this arm straight the entire time. You have to pivot with your hips. You have to lead, blah, blah, blah. It's a whole narrative, right? That's what makes a good golf swing, And the second
Right.
person or the second ideology might say, what makes a good golf swing is seeing where the ball lands.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
could have the ugliest golf swing, you could have the ugliest bat swing, you could have the ugliest whatever. What matters is where the ball lands.
Right.
Right. And so here's the thing: you can say all the stuff that's in your books, you can say all that stuff that's in your literature, which is paid for certain parties which have a certain agenda, right? A profitable agenda, which does not care about your health. Right.
Right.
So you can say, you can follow all those books, which I did, which plenty of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of carnivores have done. You go ahead and tell me what's a good golf swing, but I'm also going to listen to the people who are driving that ball where I want my ball to go. Does that make
Right.
sense? Like
Oh, yeah.
wherever the ball is landing for these people, I'm going to listen. I'm going to pay attention. I'm going to try it out, what they're doing. And it worked for me. So, what's weird about this whole credentialing obsession lately is it's a weird way of controlled speech. Like I'm a nurse, so therefore I have the authority. And so we're doing this argument from authority all the time. And at a sense, I totally get some of that. Like you shouldn't be giving medical practice to people, right? If you are not qualified to be a doctor. I get there's certain limitations for that. But as an example, to be talking about diet from my own experience, you can go forget yourself, right? If, for example, let's say I can speak multiple different languages, right? Like, hablo un poquito de español, aí eu falo português. Right? I can go on and on and on for multiple different languages, and I can speak pretty good languages. Would that mean if I did not have a degree in applied linguistics, if I did not have a degree in Spanish, if I did not have a degree in Portuguese, does that remove my validity of how I learned to speak Spanish?
Right.
And then would you want to stop me, right, from putting the information of how I learned Spanish out into the world, because that's not the right way to learn Spanish, when 98% of people, exactly, and then 98% of the people who learn Spanish in school still can't speak Spanish.
Right.
Right. So it's like it's a losing battle for us if you continue to go from the argument of authority.
Right, exactly. Well, and that's what's stupid about it. That's why it's propaganda that's actually, the science. It is propaganda because it's used to control people and to validate, and basically gatekeep information, truth, and knowledge, right? They're trying to gatekeep because because those things give you power, or those things give you freedom, right? When you have information, truth, and knowledge, and you can freely think and freely hear the competition of ideas, and you can watch it play out and watch ideas win over. They don't want that because they're trying to push a narrative. And I would say that, is some dietitian that maybe had, no weight problem in their life, or maybe had 40 pounds to lose, do they know more about losing a massive amount of weight than I do? Or do they know more, a dietitian that's never had PTSD or depression or anxiety or any of that stuff? Do they know more about how curing that with diet than you do, Chad? It's like,
Oh my God.
no, they don't.
That's a valid point.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's so stupid. We are literally listening to ideologues that get it out of books, and we know where these books are paid for. We know where the information, yes, there's some science in there, and yes, there's some good stuff in there, but there's a whole lot of fake science in those books. And it's because it's bought and paid for by peer-reviewed epidemiology studies that are a joke, right? That most of this came from pushing a narrative and a system that they want because it makes a lot of money.
You know what that reminds me of though? What's it called? I don't know if I'm about to use an offensive term, but like a person who guides you up like a mountain, like a Sherpa.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that reminds me of like some guy at REI who's never hiked a mountain selling you all the best gear.
Right.
And he's never done it. And then you got like some guy in Tibet or whatever who's like never even had nice gear, who's the guy who's guiding you up Everest. You know what I mean? Who's like who's spent a fraction on gear that you're doing. You know what I mean?
Right.
And he's been up and down. And so you're like, who are you listening to? It's like, do I listen to the guy who's never done it, but he's got all the books and all the trainings and all the nice gear and all the money? Or this guy, this Sherpa right here, who's never had nice boots, probably, you know what I mean? Never had all the nice gear, but he's been up the mountain 1,000 times. Who are you going to listen to? I mean, obviously one person looks better than the other. One person has more credentialing than the other, but yes, this is a guy who's done it.
Right.
And like you said, who's the personal trainer who tells you how to lose weight when he's always been a meathead? You know?
Right. Yeah. It's just like, yeah, you got to walk the walk, and, field experience and real life experience, in my opinion, yes, it's not everything. I don't know all of the answers to everything that happened to me and why it worked. I'm getting smarter and I'm putting the pieces together every day, but I do know the path that I walked, and I know how I got from here to there. I know the things that didn't work. I know the things that did. Maybe I don't know the exact reason why every one of them didn't and why every one of them did, but I know a lot of it now after the last 22 months, because unfortunately the professionals weren't helping me and I was dying. So I had to, right? And that's what I take offense to anymore. And I get tired of it. And this pushback, they go, you're Dr. Google or whatever. I'm like, first of all, I'm not a doctor and I'm not trying to be a doctor. But second of all, you made me be that guy to find the answer because you didn't, because your information didn't work. Everything that you told me was a lie and it fell apart. So I got here, I did save my life. And now you're telling me that everything that I did is now dangerous medical misinformation because it didn't come from your mouth and keep failing me until I died. It's kind of crazy.
That's what I'm talking about. You were dying.
Yeah.
You were following all the things that they were saying and you were dying, not like you would die. You were dying. And then all of a sudden you tried this radical thing that they call the carnivore diet. And then you got better. And then your doctor is like, wow, all your stuff that we wanted to happen is better. And you're like, yeah, I didn't take your medication and I went carnivore. And then all of a sudden he goes, whoa.
Yeah.
I'm worried about your health.
Yep, exactly. He said, I'm worried about your diet. I'm like, oh, now you are. That's cool. You weren't when it was killing me. That wasn't a big deal. You just said eat less.
So he was willing to put on blinders to the fact that you were getting healthier. All the markers he wanted. Like, for example, if you took a pill that he prescribed and those markers did the same exact thing, he would go, that pill is working.
Right.
But because it was your diet that was carnivore, all of a sudden he's worried about your health, even though the health markers that he asked you to get to got there.
For sure.
Without his medicine. It's so weird that you're the goalpost changed. Right. You need to get your markers right here. Okay, I did it. I just did it with the carnivore diet. No.
Right. Well, and that's what's wrong why all that whole system is in a box, because part of it's disbelief and whatever. And I'm sure even some of it's genuine, but some of it's just that they live in this box where their practice, their education says you have to fit, all these people have to fit in this box. They have to do this thing. and and X, Y, and Z. And if they don't, there's going to be repercussions. But just like Ken Berry found out, you know, they back up everything saying, well, people aren't successful, if we give them the protocol and they do it, and they're not successful in the long haul, it's because they have, it's because they didn't have enough discipline. They didn't try hard enough. They didn't follow the program. And, just like Ken Berry found out, he gained weight. He followed his own program and it didn't work for him. And that's how he ended up in this spot, because he saw for himself that, for all those patients weren't lying to him. And so he finally had to go, well, maybe my training's wrong. Maybe the information we've been giving people is wrong. And that's what I'm saying. It's like you keep getting beat down when it takes a lot when you get knocked down and you try something really hard and you put everything into it and you go for willpower, and then you get beat up, especially because you're doing it and you're getting even more metabolically sick and your hormones are getting even worse because you're starving yourself and you're taking away animal fats even more. And then you got to try to get back up and run at it again. You got to hype yourself out. And that's why it starts getting crazy. And that's why you end up, I know what I'm going to do this time. And that's where all these fad diets come from. And you keep hyping yourself up because you got to try something new. And it takes a lot to get yourself hyped up. You put a lot of faith in something, and then, there it goes again. You keep failing. And I just think when, going back to that original question is, why do so many people think that carnivore is not sustainable? It's because they think it's another fad diet that failed. And on top of the fad diet, it even has less options they think of eating. They don't understand that we really only have 3 options for food. We have protein, we have fat, and we have carbohydrates. That's it. And I don't care how you wrap it up and what sprinkles you put on it and what color dye you put into it and how you process it. When you go to the grocery store and you eat that junk, you're eating either processed garbage that in the form of, seed oils, which are bad fats, and processed carbohydrates, or you're eating protein and animal fat, right? There's really only 3 things. It's just how they package it. Exactly. So you think you have all these options. Well, all that we're doing is we're cutting out the bad fats, but we're basically just cutting out carbohydrates, and we're replacing it with good fats, good protein, and a high quality. So we still get to eat 66% of everything on the spectrum there. So it's like it's not that unsustainable. It's just that in the US, we're used to so many different products of so much crap that they break down carbohydrates to be, and it's not real. It's not even food. It's not even nutrients, It's just a poisonous drug.
You said something very interesting, and Anthony Chafee talks about this too, is he say, well, it's not working because people aren't listening to their doctors. And then Anthony Chafee says, no, it's not working because people are listening to their doctors. They are listening to the nutritionists. They are eating more, like they've cut saturated fat by 30%. And guess what? Tripled heart disease, right? Like all these, we've been eating meat since the beginning of time. Yet all of these new diseases that we have in the Western world, all of a sudden are because of animals, right? So it's weird. We are listening to our doctors. Our doctors are telling us less animal fats, less saturated fats. You want to eat lean meat, good protein, lean protein, chicken breast, right? The most driest thing that you could ever eat. Right. And they're saying, no, that's what you want. And man, I don't know about you, but when you eat a good ribeye or you eat a good like chuck roast or a good like New York strip, holy cow, that juicy fat, it's like you can't even stop. It's so good.
Right.
Compared to a chicken breast.
Right.
And people like, I like chicken breast. I don't know, maybe a little, but I think you more like the butter or you like the spices or the garlic or whatever you put on that chicken breast, right?
Yeah. Yeah. People have it in their head that, well, I like chicken because X, Y, and Z, but what you really like is chicken sandwiches, or you like KFC spicy chicken with a Carolina, whatever, Cajun hot sauce or whatever. And you'll find that there's MSG and all these flavor enhancers and processed crap that's, and that's doing the salty, fat, sweet profile thing.
Mm-hmm.
And most proteins, look at barbecue in the United States. It's just a delivery system for sugary barbecue sauce.
Yeah.
Most barbecue gets away with being dry, overly dry, because everybody dunks it in, all this barbecue sauce and junk. Where honestly, once you become carnivore and you become an expert at cooking meat, and your steaks don't need, if you have a good cut of steak, a good ribeye, and you cook it well, it's your palate changes, but you start to understand what is actually good meat. It'll ruin all going out to eat for you, because you'll go back
It
out to
does.
eat, and you're like, oh man, there's no good meat at all these restaurants. Like, they serve junk.
I know. I treated myself to a steakhouse. I'm not going to say which one time. And God, I was excited. I'm like, someone else is going to cook for me. They know how to cook steaks. And then when I got the steak, I was like, am I really a better cook than the cooks at the steakhouse?
Yes.
It's only because I cook a steak for every single one of my meals. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh yeah.
it blew me away to be like, I cook better steak than the steakhouse.
I know. And I mean, I look back last year, I think in a 1 year period, especially when I was going through priming phase, I think I cooked about 1,100 steaks that year, and I was like, yeah, I'm way, my steaks are by far better than any that I get in a steakhouse, by far, and it just, in a third of the price, or
Yeah.
yeah,
A third of the price. It's not even worth the price for them to cook it and them clean it.
no,
It wasn't even worth I would just rather do it.
yeah,
Yeah, you find like that butcher that you like. You find those cuts of meat that you like. You learn exactly how to smoke it or air fry it or grill it. Man, like,
and
I look
slice
forward to
everything,
cooking every
yeah,
single one.
yep,
And a lot of people don't know this, but 20% of your digestive acids are released before food even enters your mouth. Okay.
right,
And so the anticipation of food is actually very important. It's like a fifth of the job of digestion. Smelling the food, preparing the food, touching your food. A lot of people distance themselves from their food by using forks and utensils and things like this. But another thing is what helped control your hunger signals. What helped control your hunger signals was the hunt. Did you get the
oh,
hunt? You know what I mean? It was
yep,
like, oh, you either were successful in the hunt or you weren't. And so if you didn't get a successful hunt, your body wouldn't start releasing those hunger hormones. You know what I mean? It would
right,
release the motivational chemicals. But once you got the hunt, your body starts releasing those digestive chemicals, right? And then you
right,
start cooking it, and then you start preparing it, and then you start touching it, and then all of a sudden, by the time you eat it, your body is like this perfect environment of digestive enzymes and acids ready for that meal to come in, and it helps regulate your hunger to satiety, like chemical balance, your physiological processes there.
right.
And what I've noticed since I've been cooking every single one of my meals, right? I've had a lot better digestion because it's like my body's better prepared because I'm involved in the entire process of like getting it out and preparing it and salting it, getting the grill going. And you know what I mean? I'm not using a bunch of utensils. I'm like touching the meat. I'm more like, if it's ground beef, I'm like forming it. And so, yeah, anyway, I'm part of the entire process. And for people who eat, like processed food, especially with utensils, it's
Yeah,
like, man, it's just in there and your body's already behind on digestion. And I wonder how many times you can do that. Like just going insult with injury by not only putting bad food in your body, but your body's not prepared. Like a Skittle, your body, when you touch a Skittle, your body doesn't know that's food.
right,
And then all of a sudden you put it in your mouth and it's in your digestive system. And all of a sudden your body's having to absorb and digest all this sugar, which is so easily absorbable within seconds. So anyway, I know that's like a long process, but by you cooking your food and being part of that process, I think it's really important. It's really kind of bringing you back to your ancestry and what developed your physiology is cooking your own steaks and being involved. We like to outsource everything. We outsource our health. We outsource our knowledge on health. We outsource our cooking. We outsource our food prep. And so anyway, I think the less you outsource your health and your food, I think the better everything gets.
Yeah, and I I 100% agree. And that, when I go back at it, because I'm not like a fat positivity guy or any of this nonsense. I've always thought it was crazy. I'm not, I don't, I'm not a victim of anything, right? Hey Diggs, how are you, man?
Hey, what's up?
Oh, that's coming. Oh, that's cool. That's coming from Twitch. I appreciate you hopping in, Diggs. Feel free to ask any questions. We'll pop you up. But I'm not, I'm not a victim of anything. I don't sit here and claim to be a victim, but because I think people think I'm harping on that sometimes. No, I'm just saying, no, we have to be aware of our environment, that we're under attack, right? Like our health's under attack, our food environment's under attack, our knowledge is under attack, our speech is under attack. It's just good to know that. But I do like to know, what is real, right? Because I spent a long time beating myself up over not being able to fix it. And that didn't help, because then you stop looking for the real reason. If you're convinced it's you and that you're just flawed, broken, all these things, and you're unfixable or whatever, then you stop looking. But when you realize, oh, okay, we're being messed with here for profit, then that doesn't mean that you didn't have a hand to play in it, but it is good to figure out what you really did. And I, as far as I'm concerned, the thing that I screwed up and the hand that I had to play in it the most was, delegating my health to the medical professionals, because I was a food addict and I wanted to believe the lie that there was a magic pill so that I could keep eating sugar
Exactly. Yeah.
and still be an addict, but also buy this lie that there's an easy way out, by this lie that that you can have the drugs and health at the same time. I bought into that system, and I was doing it because I did not want to, just like everybody. This is why I say, why do people think it's restrictive? Well, because they're sugar addicts, they're fast, they're processed food addicts, right? And I think that's what we're all at that spot at one point. We have to get to the point where we take responsibility for our own health, which unfortunately in the day and age that we live in means not listening to the so-called professionals a lot of the time when it comes to most of it, putting it, or rethinking who the professionals actually are. Is it the people that have had the football for 70 years that's gotten 74% of America sicker and obese?
Exactly.
Or is it the people online that are not selling products, don't have any agenda, but have actually saved their life and went through it,
Yeah, I think that you have to earn that authority. Like, for example, like Einstein, right? Einstein, of course, respected Newton, but he basically disproved a theory that had been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, that had been established as fact. Like in the physics realm, Newtonian physics was the end all be all. I'm like, oh, he discovered that, and this is the way the world functions. And it turns out it's only a half truth. So Einstein, even Einstein, we look up to Einstein, right? And we look up to the Einsteins of the world, but they had to challenge the way that things are in order to develop something new. And what's even weirder about it is, like, our ancestors were the ones who were accidentally I wouldn't say accidentally, actually. I would say the ancient wisdom of our ancestors by far trumps what some of our best science knows. And it's not like our ancient ancestors were doing science experiments under microscopes. but they were following their spiritual essence. They were following their biological instincts, and they were listening to their physiological processes, and they were much healthier than we are. And so it's weird that the more we advance in science, the more ancestral like we become. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like in my opinion, I've become more ancestral than I've ever been before, yet my mental health has advanced more than it's ever have before. So all the way from the fact that like in order to develop something new in physics, you have to disprove a legend in physics. And that's a challenge of authority. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
Oh,
in
for
order
sure.
to develop. So if that's obvious, right? That's objective. You can't, like Einstein, like Newton was wrong. Einstein was wrong. Galileo, you know what I mean? Like all these people were wrong. The biggest names that we look up to in science. That's the thing, is you have to be willing to admit that all these people in a manipulated structure of profitable food might be wrong,
Right.
right? Isn't that fair to say? That
Oh,
can't
for
you just
sure.
think about that? That might be wrong. And then once you consider that and you start experimenting with yourself, and n equals one, as you say, like, why don't you just try? Right? Why don't like you what's the worst thing that happens? You eat ribeyes for a month,
Right.
you know? See how you feel after a month. See if you're still addicted. See, you know what? This is even better. Let's say, for example, for me, I hate the cold. I hate the cold more than anybody I know hating the cold. So because that controlled me, I ended up getting in the ice bath every single day, and I signed a contract to myself for 30 days, and that turned into 60 days, and that turned into 90 days. And I ended up doing like 6 months where I only missed one day in the ice bath, and that day I took a cold shower. So the thing is, okay, if something is controlling you, how about that be your reason for giving it up? I can't imagine myself without fruit. Okay, well, guess what? You're not going to die, right? I've been going on for a year and some change without a single vegetable or whatever. Okay, so you're not going to die. So if let's try to give yourself a challenge,
For
like
sure.
in Stoicism, we kind of do that a lot, like Stoic philosophers. It's like try sleeping a month without a blanket. Try sleeping a month on the floor. Try not touching hot water for a month. Try all these things. Try not having your car for a month. You know what I mean? And you always
Right.
think like, well, I have to, I have to, I have to. What if you had no other option? The only reason you think you can't is because you have other options. Why don't you just try giving yourself a challenge to see, am I really addicted to food or not? Because we have these gentlemen on this iron sharpens iron telling me I'm addicted to food. Okay, so let's go ahead and give a challenge. Maybe I'm not addicted to food, or maybe, yeah, I'm not addicted to food. So I'm going to put up a challenge to prove that I'm not addicted to food. Does that make sense?
For
So it's like,
sure.
here, prove it. Let's prove it if you're not addicted to food. And so, anyway, I would just say try to look at it from that perspective. Give yourself the challenge. If you,
For
if
sure.
yeah, what's the worst that happens is you've proven me right.
Right. 100%. And I
Or,
agree. Yeah, I think that all the time when people message me and go, I like the idea of this, but I could never give up. And then they list X, Y, and Z every time. And
mhm.
I'm like, I started realizing that if I say I would do that and it could change my life and it could say everything, but I could never do without. And as soon as I hear that, I realize, well, then if that's your why to not do it, then you do it. You're all right there already finding out you have an addiction, because
Mhm.
there shouldn't be anything that you couldn't live without for at least 90 days. You know what I mean? Like there really shouldn't be anything, short of water and air, you know,
Yeah.
you couldn't live without for 90 days. I mean, and so if something immediately pops up, that's your thing. If for some people it's sugar, for some, and just know that it's usually like if if somebody says, I couldn't do without my fruit, you're just saying sugar. You're just saying sugar. If somebody says, you know, without my coffee, well, you're either saying caffeine or you're saying sugar and caffeine. I mean, that's really it, with coffee people, whenever it's this thing. but you have an addictive ritual that you use as a, just as a mechanism every day to get through the day that you rely on. It's your only fix. It gives you, if that's the thing that you go to make the stress go away, to make the day go by easier to get through, that's the thing for sure that you're addicted to. You should be getting by the day on energy, health, sleep, like good mental focus and energy, and achieving, kind of growing, achieving better health, achieving better strength, achieving, actually making progress. We've kind of traded health and energy and progress for these dopamine fixes.
Yeah. It's very interesting that you said drug addicts, for those, you couldn't imagine your life without chewing tobacco. Right. Smokers can't imagine their life without cigarettes. Cocaine, crack addicts can't imagine their life without crack. Cocaine heads can't imagine their life without cocaine. You know what I mean? Once you got a certain addiction, you can't imagine your life without it. Alcoholics can't imagine their life without alcohol. And the people who aren't addicted, like, well, obviously you can live with your life without it, because we all don't. But you as an individual, like, we all think we're so special. And that's why I think the ice bath is like a very good analogy. It's very rough and mean, and a lot of people don't like to hear it. But listen to this. The ice water is the same temperature for everyone. Okay? You're not special. It's not extra cold for you, right? You don't have some special circumstance where you can't handle the cold any better or any worse than anybody else. The temperature is the same for everyone. Okay? You think you're special because you like food? Get the fuck over yourself. Food is good for everyone because food is addictive. You don't think I have foods that I absolutely love? You don't think I love Chinese food and Italian food and root beer floats and ice cream? You don't think I love all those things? You think you're the only one? Like, you know what I mean? I don't know how to say that. No, the thing is, the water's cold, and the only difference between you and I is I kept getting in there. You know what I mean? I gave up those carbs. I gave up the sugar, and it was hard as hell. I know out of a lot of the people who have switched to carnivore, my story is one of the roughest stories of making that transition over. I was miserable. Like, my detox and my carb withdrawal was like, I went out camping for a week just so that way I couldn't do it. Does that make sense? Like, I had no cell reception. And in that first week, I was, oh my God, miserable. And I was high in elevation. So I think I made it worse on myself, but at least I wasn't around foods I couldn't eat. I bought a bunch of food that I could eat, went out, you know what I mean? Right. And God, that keto flu or the carnivore flu was atrocious. But here's the thing. It's going to be atrocious for you too, or it's going to be easier, right? But regardless, you're not special for liking food. Everyone thinks that they're so special. Yes. Right. Everyone thinks that they have some sort of excuse that omits them from the fact that they could be healthy. You know what I mean? Whether it be their genetics or the way they're raised or whatnot. I can't even, and I guess I kind of get into this a little bit more because I coach jiu-jitsu as well. I was like, yeah, nobody's good at jiu-jitsu when you get started. 0 people. You know what I mean? Like, there hasn't been one person on this world who was just like, I naturally picked up grappling. That's just not how it works. Right. Even when you started, if you started as a kid, you probably sucked as a kid before you became an adult. But if you're an adult starting, it's not like, no. If you were out of shape, it sucks getting in shape. If you weren't good at grappling, it sucks grappling when you first get started. If it's climbing, you're going to suck at climbing till you get started. Regardless, where you start, it's going to suck when you get started, and sucking at it is a first step to getting better. So if you're like, oh, I can't imagine my life without this. No, you know what's weird is you just don't know your life with it. Does that make sense? So like, you don't know what your life is healthy. And so you give yourself an excuse to live a half life. And that's what's most frustrating, is that you make it a special excuse that omits you from everybody else. Like, oh yeah, those people, they can do it, but not me because I'm special. No, the water is the same for everybody. Get in the water.
Right. And I agree with that. And that's why I showed this picture again, because I've said many times that that the temptations and the struggles and basically the resistive load is not different for the guy on the left than it is the right. The only difference is the guy on the left healed and he got stronger, so it feels easy to him now, right? When you get stronger and you heal, it becomes easy, and that's why it becomes no big deal. Where the guy on the right has gotten sick and weak to it, and so the same amount of force is, the same amount of weight is a lot heavier. The same amount of resistance and force is a lot harder to restrict at first, and that's why starting sucks. That's why that's why these things feel so big. It's not because they're a bigger struggle than anybody else has. It's because you're in a different spot to handle it, and that is why the water is the same. But it is true that you have to start where you're at, and this is why I like what Jordan Peterson says, that we don't want to humble ourselves to set the bar low enough that it's an achievable change that we can make consistently. We set the bar high sometimes because we want to make such a big change that it's not sustainable to us. But the way out is actually looking at your situation, finding that one thing that's small enough that you could actually change, and then getting up every day and making that change consistency. And then you add on to that. That starts to build. That's how you get strong, and that's how you get out of it. But also, if you were doing that, but you were doing the wrong thing, right? That's why you can't just beat yourself up, because you can do that on the standard American diet and you can get along for a while, but it's going to fail you because ultimately you're malnourished and it's not the proper human diet. So you're going to fight it through calorie restriction. But so that is why you have to forgive yourself enough and stop beating yourself up. You got to take the credit where credit's due, the part that you had to play in it, delegating it to other people, not stepping up, and not, you got to continue to fight. But you also have to be aware that, when you're going through this, you got to find the right thing, and you have to give it a real go, and you have to understand, you really have to understand what's going on with your body. So you kind of need to start with getting information and changing the way you think about things. Don't just blindly listen to people with accolades and, white coats. You better start finding people in the real world that have been in your shoes and climbed out, and broke a trail and actually made it out. And then you need to get involved in those communities, and then you need to start making small changes consistently, and then work on it every day. And you'll start to build that muscle where it's no longer unsustainable. It's no longer unachievable. You're no longer too far gone. Yeah. You start to heal and you go, oh, okay, this works. We can keep building up on this. And then you don't give up. You build up some momentum,
Start where you are. That's okay. Where are you? Take a step in the right direction. You know what's very weird is everyone thinks that our lives we have these pivotal moments of, like, there's this big decision I made and I could have gone this way or this way. I could have married this person instead of this person, or I could have taken this career or that career, or I should have said yes to a move to a different, we think our lives are based off of these big decisions. But I think, in my humble opinion, that I strongly believe that our lives are made in the smallest decisions. Every time you chose the discipline over the lazy route, right? The time you could have, like you threw something away but didn't land in the trash can, like making the extra little effort to go pick that up. Because it's like, who do you respect? If you watch somebody throw something and it didn't land in the trash and they walked away from it, you're like, oh, you little shithead, right? But if you do it to yourself, that's how you view yourself. And so if you start becoming the person in every single little step, having the discipline in every tiny decision, did I walk or did I stay on the couch? Did I stay inside and look at my phone, or did I get out in the sun and ground? Did I, did I eat the candy and like not work out today because I felt like I earned it? Or did you get in the gym and you avoided the crappy food? And those tiny decisions build up the habits of a successful person and formulate your life a lot more than you realize. Your environment forms you a lot more than you realize, right? And so this is your environment up here, your discipline up here. Every single day, your worst day in the gym is better than every day on the couch.
For sure.
Right? So yeah, I think what you're talking about, start where you are and do one thing better today than you did yesterday, right? Yeah, and it's all like, well, not right now. That's always the thing. It's like, oh, maybe Monday. I'm going to start Monday, and it's always this weird thing. It's like that's how you view yourself. You view yourself as not strong enough to start now. You view yourself as like not capable of doing what other people can do. Like you view yourself as built differently, or you view yourself as raised differently. No, you can do all that. You can make yourself. I've seen one-legged people winning jiu-jitsu competitions. You know what I mean? Like, despite the fact of having 3/4 of the limbs that you have, half the legs that you have, they still like, should they be the best at jiu-jitsu? No, but guess what? They do. And so what I'm saying is like, it doesn't matter what handicap you have or what, I guess, disability or what hindrance you have getting started. If you want it bad enough, you can do it. And I strongly believe that start where you are and see how far you can go with it. But that starts right now. It starts with taking a step in the right direction right now. It starts with changing how you view yourself right now, and the discipline and the amount of respect and the willingness for consistency, habit changing, and persistence. In order to do that, you have to change your mindset right now. And so when you say start where you're at, okay, where are you at right now? You're in you, right? Your mental status is in you. You're stuck in you for the rest of your life, right? So in my opinion, that was the best thing for me in life is I started viewing myself as a champion. I started viewing myself as anybody who can accomplish anything. It doesn't matter, and that only happened because strength was my only option. I was dying health-wise. I had a really ugly business split up, and I thought I was about to lose my life savings. I sold my house to build up the equity and, the finances in order to start my business. I had that stolen from me, right? I had all these things, but what I ended up doing from that, that developed me into the man I am today, and to the point where my business, I have the best jiu-jitsu gym in my area. Out of all, there's like it's like freaking Starbucks. There's one on every corner now. But we dominated the last competition that we were in by almost triple the amount of points that second place had. We won all our categories: best women's division, best overall team, and best kids team. And like, I love the amount of we have a ton of students, but we have a really tight-knit community. I really love our culture, so on and so forth. I built that after somebody tried to destroy that business. I had to start it from the ground up. Now I have this confidence in who I am, but I developed that through the fact that I wasn't good at that at one time.
Right.
I had to forge through the fact that there was no other option. And at that same time, my health was horrible, right? As you guys know. And so like, I'm confident in the carnivore diet. I was never confident in the diet. I was never confident that I knew what was happening was the right thing. I was never confident in knowing what was happening in my body physiologically. But now I am, only because I forced myself to learn, because that was my only option. So the thing is, like, I didn't start off with a successful gym. I didn't start off with a lot of capital. I actually started off with a bad reputation and negative capital because I had it stolen from me, and I had to build from the ground up. I didn't start off with this clean bill of health. I had a horrible bill of health, right? So it's like, you see people like Anthony Chafee and you see Dr. Sean O'Mara and stuff, and you see them, it's like it looks easy for them, but didn't always start off easy for them. Right. You know what I mean? And so one thing I love about Todd is like, we're in the middle of Todd's journey. Todd was above 700 pounds and he's right in the middle of it. You guys are getting to witness the evolution and the transformation, right? There's no excuses for you at this point. And so go ahead.
Oh no, that's one of my favorite, I guess, replies to the trolls that, that have something to say about where my weight's at now. I'm like, well, I'm putting it on the world for the world to see. So you can keep me honest,
Yeah.
keep watching, keep complaining, keep throwing the hate. And we'll see where we're at in another 2 years. So far it's been 2 years and 310 pounds down. We'll see where another 2 years gets me.
310 pounds down. Like, could you imagine, like, think of a 300-pound person walking out of another human being. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's incredible. How many people have lost 300 pounds plus?
Yeah.
How many people? Like, how many people in the world? How awesome is that? So you've lost 300 pounds. I've never done that. And like, the thing is, like, I don't have confidence in saying I've lost a bunch of weight because I've never done it.
Yeah.
And I never had confidence in the fact that I was business savvy, but now I do.
Yeah,
I was never confident in knowing about nutrition, but now I am. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, for sure.
You only build your confidence by starting where you are, going through the trials of the fact that it's difficult, and learning something new makes you look like an idiot at first. And the being bad at something is the first step into being good at something, right? So
sure.
should Todd then have just been like, count me out. I'm already 700 pounds. You know what I mean? That I guess that was my life. It was a good run. I wasn't dealt a good hand. And so that's me. Or did you have to take that first step, the first step in the right direction, that success is 695 pounds? You know what I mean? Still, it, like, objectively, is that good? No. But subjectively, that's incredible. Because if you were moving in this direction and now you're moving in this direction, I don't think people realize stopping the inertia of the wrong direction is one of the hardest things you can do. And it takes a while to even stop the inertia and then build the inertia back in the correct direction. So it, like, I know I was kind of ranting there for a little while, and I tend to do that, but I just care a lot about people. And when I get excuses from people, it makes me sad that they want an excuse to not live their best life. And when you only have one life to live, that's heartbreaking to hear from people that you care about.
Yeah, and for sure. And it's because truthfully they don't think they can do it, right? So they make those kind of excuses and cop outs or whatever. And like, they believe them at the time. I believed plenty of them for a long time. That's why we delegate it to other people, to professionals, so to speak. But that is why I am a fan now of, above all things, make the change small enough that it's sustainable for you, so that you do make it. Because once you make it, you'll get that little bit stronger, and you'll start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Even little things, it'll make you so much stronger and give you so much more faith in the process and yourself, and go, okay, I can climb out of this, like step at a time. I got a long way to go. But just like you said, just the fact that if you're making small steps forward, you're not making giant steps backwards like you were before, getting deeper into your problem.
Absolutely. So my daughter and my wife just came into the room. Here, come say hi.
No worries.
Say hi.
Hi. Hi guys, how are you?
Are you coming to say goodbye? Yeah. Okay, so good. Love you guys.
Love you.
Love you. All right.
Good to see you guys.
Bye. I love you, sweetie.
We'll see y'all. That's awesome.
Sorry,
no worries.
They just barged in here. It was funny too, because I had something holding up my green screen on one side because it was kind of Jimmy rigged, and it almost fell on all the equipment. But anyway, sorry about that. We're spending the night in separate places tonight, so they wanted to come say goodnight.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, right, but sorry about that. But I love them. That girl right there, my redhead. Yeah, the rumors about redheads are so true. Like, I have my oldest daughter is a brunette, and then my son is a blonde, and then I got my middle child who's a redhead. Man, they're spicy. You met them though, when we were in Wyoming. Yeah, so yeah, they're awesome. Crazy.
Yeah, for sure. That's funny. No, but you have an awesome family. That's really good. And how I was meaning to ask you this: are they mostly carnivore now too, or?
Yeah. So my youngest is fully carnivore. My daughters, they kind of cheat a little bit because they Yeah, but they're mostly carnivore. And then my wife, it's funny because she'll be mostly carnivore, and then she's like, I just want this, and she'll come up with an excuse, right? Like she'll be like, well, it's a special occasion, this, that, and the other thing, and then it's a disaster afterwards. So she kind of being more bumpered in there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just because, yeah, but yeah, we're a carnivore family for the most part.
Nice.
And what's very interesting is like my daughter, the redhead, like she had all this skin problems on the back of her legs and arms, like back
Yeah.
here, and completely gone. Like the other day, like I kind of grabbed her and it was like smooth. I'm like, what is this?
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it was pretty cool. And let's talk about this actually. My oldest daughter, she was breastfed, and then she went to bottle, and then Jade my wife was having a really hard time, and then we went to formula. My second daughter, which came a year after my first daughter, Irish twin style, my wife was just like exhausted, postpartum, really bad. Tried to breastfeed a little bit, but just went to formula. All right. Sorry. And then my son, we ended up breastfeeding the longest and the most. And anyway, like, I don't know, but I don't know how to put it this way, but my daughter, who is like deaf and glasses and like blind and can't see, is the one that that Jade didn't breastfeed. And her diet was probably the worst at that time.
I gotcha.
Going into that. And so I always wondered, I mean, especially with my opinion about breastfeeding now, and with my opinion about what's where like how bad formula is, I guess all the garbage and formula and whatnot. Hopefully I don't get canceled for saying that. Right. But I noticed that with my kids, I pay attention now to what their diet was, what their environment was, what my wife's diet was, and what her environment was during all those events. And like which ones have glasses and which ones have hard of hearing and which ones have this and which ones have that. And so, Finny, my second, the one that you just saw, she has like what's it called?
Stigmatism.
Yeah, stigmatism, but she's got bottle glasses, like bottle.
Yeah.
What's it called? What are they called? Coke bottles.
Coke bottles. Yeah.
Yeah. However, yeah. And she's been hard of hearing since she was a kid, and she's a lot better now. But I don't know. A lot of people talk about how, like, for you, talk about your eyesight, for example.
Well, in fact, let me back up on that even a little bit, because what I was going to say, what's interesting is I'm the youngest of 6 kids. I'm also the heaviest of 6 kids, right? So I kind of went down this rabbit hole because I watched my oldest brother's 21 years older than me, and he never had a weight problem. He's pretty skinny, pretty lean. And as my mom had more kids, they got bigger and bigger and bigger. And so, like, my brother Ty, he was second biggest, and he was like 320 pounds. And then my sister was like third biggest, and she was like 300 pounds. And then my brother John was big, was pretty big. He was like 250 pounds at one point, or 260. And then Mike was like 230, and Ray was like 180, 190, the first one. So I asked Mom, because I read Dr. Fung's book, and they talked about insulin resistant in infants and how you can start off insulin resistant. And so I watched, and when Mom had her first son, my oldest brother, he was, mom lived basically on the farm. That was farm life. And they're very broke. So they just ate animal products. They got, chicken eggs off the farm. They ate that sort of stuff. And Dad was in the military. He was a Marine. And so Dad was gone, and Mom was basically just fending for herself with the family and on the farm. And it was a different time. And then as it came along, as like processed food and boxed foods and TV dinners and boxed, canned goods and stuff came out, she started eating more and more and more of that. And then you get all the way down to me, because, there's a 21-year difference between my oldest brother and me. and you got all the way down to me. Well, then by the time I was born and she's pregnant with me, she was eating donuts and ice cream
Mhm.
and cheesecake and drinking soda and cans. And that was pretty much all the whole family was living off of. And so, I was 300 pounds by the time I was like 7 years old. I was 600 pounds by the time I was 14 years old. So that was clearly insulin resistant. It was a bad diet, but it was also insulin resistant. Like, you can't put on that much weight in that short of a period of time without having a serious metabolic disease. And so I really think from what the research says, it shows that if when you're pregnant, if you're eating a bunch of sugar, it's not the insulin that goes down the bill your through, the insulin doesn't transfer to the infant, but the glucose does. And then that
Mm.
baby its little pancreas has to put out adult size shots of insulin in the womb to bring its own glucose down and fight it.
God.
Yeah. And so when you're spiking the infant's blood sugar in the womb, that little baby's pancreas is pumping out the insulin. And
That is crazy. That
yeah,
is insane. Sorry, I want you to keep going, but I'm just saying you're blowing my mind. Like, my responses over here, like, I know they're quiet because I'm trying to be respectful, but you're blowing my mind with
well,
this.
and
And
it's
it makes sense about what that guy said about the fat cells getting bigger.
yep,
You know what
100%.
I mean? Oh my
Yep.
God.
Yeah, and so I've been watching that, and I'm like, this is why when people are like, "Well, I don't," how do you justify getting to 700 pounds? All this stuff. You're like I just get all these trolls, but I'm like, listen, you shouldn't look at me as a one off because I will be the future. Okay, if we don't fix insulin resistance and we don't fix our food environment, look around you. All right, I'm 41 years old. If you look back 41 years ago, I was an absolute offshoot. I was one of the probably first insulin resistant infants, right? It's to be that big, probably so.
Mhm.
But now you look around compared to like the 1960s, 70s, 60s, 80s, everybody is overweight and obese, like huge. And in another 30 years, there's going to be a lot more 700-pound people. There's a lot right now. Like, I just started a channel 14 months ago, and I found 4 of us that are over 700 pounds, just in a little tiny channel. And that's why we do 700 plus on Sundays, because we're wanting to kind of showcase that, one, you can come back from that, but two, that this isn't like an accident or a fluke. This is going to be the future of our infants if we don't fix this food supply, because if people keep having insulin resistance and mothers keep eating that type of food that they even think is healthy, we're going to have more and more and more insulin resistant infants. Because
Yeah.
my buddy said he said it a long time ago, but when I was talking to him, he goes, how heavy were you when you were 14? I was like at 600 pounds. He goes, well, then clearly you had a medical problem. There's something biologically or metabolically wrong with you. And I'm like, well, how can you say that? And he's like, because he goes, when I was 14, I was trying to gain weight and I couldn't get over 120 pounds, and I was eating everything I could eat, and I couldn't get over that weight. He said, you could have put a gun to my head and gave me 10 years and I couldn't have weighed 600 pounds if I wanted to. Like, you could have fed me anything and I couldn't have got there. And that kind of got me thinking. It's like, yeah, there are people that are on the other side of the spectrum that can't gain weight, like me, or to the scale that I did. But and I'm not saying you can ruin anybody's health with diet and anybody can get overweight and sick. I'm not saying that you can't. But what I am saying is that when you get a head start in the womb and you come out extra insulin resistant, I mean, you're going to be plagued by it. That's how
Yeah.
you get to 600 pounds when you're 14. That's how that happened.
That's why I would say then it's everyone likes to make the claim, well, it's like, it's my genetics. I'm just this, I'm just that. Right? It's like, that's the perfect way to say that you could be born that way with it not being genetic.
Right.
Right.
For sure.
And it makes sense because then you're introduced to those foods from the womb.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so it's like, if your parents had that style of lifestyle, and like you're talking about with your mom, it was a style of convenience. With the more kids she had, right, it went more convenient, and the more
Sure.
what's it called, affordable those foods became. It's like, well, I don't have time to cook now. I don't have time to food prep. The food that's already prepped for me is cheaper than buying all the ingredients. So I might as well save 3 hours and then, save money. So what's interesting is not only are you being introduced to it in the womb, but then as you come out of the womb, that's the food that you're first getting to, right? And then on top of that, if you're being breastfed, what's in the breast milk, if your mother's not eating that a better diet at that point, and if you're not being breastfed, then you're getting the crap that they give you for formula. So it's like it's a lose battle. And so then they can just say, well, it's genetics because your mom was overweight. Well, yeah, I know why she's overweight. She was eating the junk food while she was pregnant with me. Her hormones get all out of whack. You know what I mean? And then it's hard for her to recover from that. So now we're talking about generational of being overweight. And I kind of put this post up earlier. And you tell me if you think this is funny or not, or if it's just offensive. It's probably both. I said, saying somebody is overweight because of genetics, or saying that you have like an autoimmune disorder because of genetics, is exactly like saying you have black lung because of genetics, even though my father and my grandfather all worked in the same mine.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't find it offensive at all, but here's what I do think. I think from what I'm gathering, so there's two types of DNA in the body. There's like intercellular DNA, and then there's like mitochondrial DNA. And mitochondrial can be passed along through genetics, through through your offspring. However, it can be changed. So like I can hurt my mitochondrial DNA, then have a kid pass along some damaged mitochondrial DNA, if I understand all this right, to my offspring, and they can be born at a deficit. Now, that doesn't mean they're stuck there. They can you can heal mitochondrial DNA. You can change it for your kid, right? So there's that, and there is the insulin resistance, because there definitely is something. There's some proclivity to some people, which I believe is insulin resistance and metabolic disease, that you can be born with, because whatever, you're just like your daughter didn't get the right nutrients when she wasn't breastfed, and I was probably, I wasn't being breastfed, and I was getting hit with all this glucose. But it's not this isn't a victim thing. This isn't an excuse thing. You don't just have to settle for it, and it can be fixed. You can correct it. You can heal it. But we're not being told the right thing, right? And I get letters and emails and stuff from people trying to tell me that my parents, were so neglective and all this stuff. And people need to relax and look at the real situation of it. In the 60s, 70s, 80s, when my parents' diet began to change, everybody thought that this was great. Nobody thought that the new processed food was going to hurt anybody, right? These, they trusted these systems that hadn't gone on long enough for us to know that this was causing sickness, and you couldn't trust these people. That's number one. Number two, I also came from a very poor family where it was an exciting victory for my family to be able to buy these foods, because that meant we were coming out of poverty. I know it's stupid now, but back then, in order to be successful enough to buy food at a grocery store and make sure your kids weren't hungry and weren't starving to death, and even for them to put on a little weight, back then that was a good thing. That meant you weren't starving, right?
Yeah.
That meant that you weren't, because there's a lot of times, when my oldest brother, who is skinny, my mom tells me stories how she had one ham bone and she kept having to warm it up in water and make ham broth until it was basically just salt water that she was eating, because they didn't have food. So she would live off of ham broth, and she'd try to find like a head of cabbage and take it and cut it up for 7 days, put little pieces of cabbage, one ham bone she'd boiled 4 different times with some salt and some water, and that's what they're eating, So to go from that to being financially successful enough to buy the canned goods and the junk in the store, and to watch your kids be able to eat something, that was a bonus. At the time, they didn't realize what was going on, and that's how all this stuff happened.
Yeah, that you're 100% correct. And so I always come across as insensitive. Yes. So there's something called epigenetics, right? And genetic expression gets turned on or turned off based on your environment. And depending on how you respond to that environment will be based off of your genetic disposition, right? And so, for example, when you ate a lot of sugar, right, you got fatter. When
For
I
sure.
ate a lot of sugar, my mind melted. My digestive system went through hell. So it's like you were actually better disposed or predispositioned to handle sugar in your bloodstream, your fat, as we learned from that one gentleman in our Saturday chat. You learn, your body learned to adapt earlier, where I wasn't getting fat. Yeah, I was going down the tube mentally and digestively. And so like you probably were saved from a lot of the horrors that I went through. And I was probably saved from a lot of the horrors that you went through. That is our epigenetics, how we respond to that environment. So yes, of course, how you respond to your environment is going to be your genetic disposition. However, you can turn on and off gene expressions with epigenetics. And actually, one of the biggest pushes of that environment is sunlight, is vitamin D and getting in the sun. It determines circadian rhythm, lots of things, so on and so forth. So anywho, this is all to go back to say, though, the environment's the most important thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Regardless of where you start, change the environment. Change your mental environment, change your spiritual environment, change your physical environment, change the people you're hanging out with, change your influences, change the information you're taking in.
Yeah, and don't ever be a victim. Don't just say, because it doesn't matter. This is why I never take offense to any of that stuff, because to anything about genetics or otherwise, I don't care. I'm all for not having an excuse, because what good does an excuse do? As soon as you lean on an excuse, that means you're accepting that this is all that you can be, or that this is the situation you're going to be in, and you can't make it better. Like, even if that was true, even at the end of the day, and you fought 50 years and it didn't get much better, you're still better off for trying, because at least you had a shot, right? You didn't just lay down and take it and let it get worse. You at least stopped it from getting worse,
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, I don't really, I honestly, I don't care, I don't care. It's fun to learn for the knowledge of things, but as far as what my path forward is, it's never mattered how I got here. It's always matter how I get out of here, right? And so I don't care. I don't care if it was genetic. I don't care if it wasn't genetic. I don't care if I'm 100% at fault. I don't care. The only reason why I care now is because, some people, because I'm always big on not being a victim, and having that dumb victim mentality, and kind of wallowing in the past, and type of stuff. But I also do preach about I got a bone to pick with these companies that keep putting pain and suffering on the world, because my dad died, my brother died, my brother's wife died. I don't even talk about this much, but she died. I was thinking about it the other day. She was the first death because she was overweight, and she died when she was 22 of a blood clot that came loose because she was 500 pounds. She died when she was 22, a month shy of her and Ty's wedding anniversary. And then Ty died at 40, but he really was a problem that he had when he was 38 from the wrong prescription being diagnosed or being prescribed to him, and some stupid crap. And Dad died right in there. So anyhow, I keep those things in mind, because that's what keeps me. I'm not a victim from all that stuff, but it does remind me that we're being attacked. That this isn't a patty cakes sweet little thing that's going on. We're at war. We're fighting an enemy.
Yeah, but we're a result of our environment, right?
Sure.
And so, like, you're not a victim, but you are a result of your environment. You know what I mean? And so, like, for you, if you were insulin resistant before you were born, there's a difference between being a victim and being a result of the environment that you didn't choose. So, and that's what the whole idea behind the black lung thing. It's like, we all probably have how many people worked in the mine and never got black lung? How many people smoked their whole life and never got lung cancer? Right? However, what if we never go in the mine again, or we never smoke again? What's the likelihood that you're going to get black lung? And what's the likelihood that you're going to get lung cancer? You know what I mean? Like my wife's aunt died of lung cancer, didn't smoke, but her husband smoked.
Oh, wow.
So she got secondhand smoke lung cancer. So the thing is, like, the genetic disposition was there. So it's like, you can say, he's like, well, I don't think it's genetics because, this, that, and the other thing. But the reality is he had a genetic disposition that helped him combat that better. And she didn't have that genetic disposition. And so she ended up getting cancer. But the reality is, if he had stopped smoking, the likelihood of either of them getting cancer goes down. Does that make sense? And so it's like blaming the genetics is like, that's like a side note. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I guess we could talk about that argument. But if you would have just gotten rid of the damn cigarettes in the first place, you know what I mean? And so blaming it on genetics is, I think, like a cheap shot. And so when we look at the people in the mine, and you have 3 generations of people who got black lung, it's like, at what point do you start blaming the mine?
Right.
You know, but you look at the genetics, it's like, well, they had genetic disposition for lung cancer. And so it's their genes, it's not the mine. That's the way they're gaslighting us. They're poisoning us with our food. And then when you get fat, it's like, well, yeah, your genetics, you're going to get fat, rather than saying, well, yeah, you have a genetic disposition to be overweight, but if you just stop eating the poison, you wouldn't be overweight. And that's what I mean by that. I'm glad that you clarified. I'm glad that you clarified that.
No, I totally agree. And I get it too, because it's like, they do not want to encourage people or make people aware that their environment is addictive. They're addicted to their environment. That's good for profit for these companies. That's good for a lot of reasons, for a certain amount of control and a certain amount of, just control and power and profit. And so they never do that. They never tell you, well, yeah, they always lead you astray away from the answer, and they put the bonus back on you. Well, yeah, you're just genetically predispositioned to have addictive personality, and you, of course, you can't do it on your own. You need a pill, you need help, you need a program, you need all this stuff. And we all get so blindsided, and we keep hearing this narrative that, oh, what's because of your genetics, it's because of who you are. It's not your fault, but you're just not like other people. Meanwhile, I'm like, well, technically I'm like 74% of other people, because we're watching, if you really look at it, we are the majority now. The sick people are the majority, which is super sad. We got to fix this. But that's what we really have to wake up to. I mean, at the end of the day, the third leading cause of death in our country is also the number one treatment for the first and second leading cause of death, which is the medical system. It really is. And so
we're going to get in trouble.
Probably, but it's just like, I mean, that's true, right? The third leading cause of death is treatment. And doctors, the number one leading cause of death for cardiologists is still heart disease, right? So 74%, like, what are we doing exactly? If you just look at the chart from like the 1960s till today, as they took animal fats and animal protein out of our diet and replaced it with carbohydrates, that same scale, if it climbs at that exact same rate for metabolic disease, sickness, and disease. So it's like, we know exactly what caused this. It is just like I've said, just like Chad's been saying all night, it's our food environment. It is our environment. It is how we approach things now. It's how we look at health. It's how we look at nutrition. It's how we look at our options. And we prioritize feeding our addictions and believing that we don't have a choice or an option out of it, over trying everything we can naturally. We stopped, for whatever, believing in kind of, our nature, how we came up, how our species got here in the first place. And we got to go back to that. And as you see, that's what carnivore is all about in the most simplest of terms. And it is having a miraculous result. I mean, it absolutely is. It is the proper human diet. And we're watching it over and over. You're seeing it in Chad here. You're seeing it in me. You're seeing it in hundreds and hundreds, if thousands more carnivores. Look at, Carrie Mann and Bella's videos. Join the SBG and go to the NSB meetings on Saturdays. And it's incredible. You watch, dozens and hundreds of people every week go through all the things that are healing up and all their breakthroughs that they're having. That's not just weight related, but, medicine related, disease related, medical conditions turning around. I was 22 months ago, I was oxygen dependent. I had to be on 6 liters of home oxygen. I couldn't breathe, couldn't walk, had congestive heart failure. I couldn't move. Now I'm working out at 4 o'clock in the morning every morning, lifting weights, and
Mhm.
in just 22 months, not 10 years, not 5 years, not medical procedures later, not new heart, not a stent or bypass surgery or something stupid. No, just eggs, bacon, beef.
Mhm.
That's it. 22 months.
Um, Something you said in there that I wanted to touch on. I think back also to what we were talking about, people want to be special. And what the doctors say, it's like people just want an excuse almost. And doctors give them the excuse. It's like they want an answer why things aren't going. Oh, it's because I have Hashimoto's. All these things, like I have Hashimoto's. That's why. You know what I
Right.
mean? I would be an awesome athlete, but I have Hashimoto's. I would do this, but I found out I have this. And it's like it totally takes the responsibility off of you. You know what I mean? To be like, no, there's this other reason why I couldn't be great. There's this other reason why I couldn't achieve the best that I would have done this with my life, but that's when I got diagnosed with this. And I think that sucks because doctors are giving them that out.
Right.
You
Well,
know what I
that
mean?
I'm going to say something real controversial here, but I've always believed this. I hate names. Look at all the names in the new diagnosis, and they name it as diseases or syndromes or disorders or complexes, right? I mean, there's everything now. I mean, everything's got a name and
Hmm.
everything's got a diagnosis, and I think that's one of the biggest lies. I think as soon as and I'm not alone. Dr. Kilt says this. He said, if you name it, you enable it.
Hmm.
And I truly believe that, because if you have something going on and you go to the doctor and they say you have X, Y, or Z, pick your poison. I don't care. They tell you that that's the cause of your problem. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. I'm not saying you're not experiencing that same thing. Those are all true. But the problem is they come at it backwards and they tell you this is the cause of your problem. This is your problem, that you have this thing. Well, I call bullcrap. I think that they just named a symptom. You are seeing a manifestation of a symptom that they gave a name and called it your disease. And if you take that thing and you just settle right there that that's the thing that you're going to have to live with because you have it now, that be luck of the draw, be genetics, be whatever, that's the thing you have now. I call bullcrap. What we're finding out is that those are all just symptoms, including obesity, including depression, anxiety. I wasn't dying because I had depression or anxiety or obesity. Even obesity and fat is a parallel symptom to a metabolic disease that is a food environment, a malnutrition problem, and the fact that we're poisoning ourselves with the bullcrap food that we've been eating. And it
Hmm.
manifests in all sorts of problems and all sorts of symptoms that they give names so that they can treat them one at a time, so that they can sell you the most profitable amount of drugs and get you sidetracked in just treating these things. This is why
Exactly.
when I came out of the hospital and they said, "Oh, you have COVID lung, you have congestive heart failure, we think you had a stroke, you have lymphedema, you have issues with fluid now, you have sleep apnea." I mean, they gave me a laundry list. You have reactive airway disease. You have to see a pulmonologist, a cardiologist, a dietitian. I mean, they gave me a list. You have to go see a sleep specialist and blah, 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 blah. They gave me this list of things and a bucket of prescriptions to take. And as soon as I saw that, I just flashed back to my dad and my brother, who
Hmm.
followed to the beat of this drum, where they went and saw the specialist. They got more drugs. They came home. They took the drugs. They would, if you have side effects from the drugs, they'd have to have more visits to the doctor because they're taking so many pills. They had to balance them out. And then they go back and they say, oh, and then, because then my dad took all those drugs. And then they're like, oh, now you have to have dialysis because your kidneys are gone. So then dad all of a sudden had to have dialysis. And then lo and behold, that's the blood, right? Well, then he has leukemia, which is what ended up getting him. So I
Hmm.
just watched him do all these things, take all the drugs. He never got off drugs. They just kept giving him more and more drugs, and the drugs would fight. And so for 30 some years, It just got worse and worse and worse. And he went to more and more appointments because he had all these things now. He had all these things that they gave him. Watched my brother Ty do the same thing until he died, at 40. And I watched that, and I was just like, and I watched my mom do it until she got Parkinson's, and I'm trying to get food in her right now. I've got her on carnivore. She's 80, but it's rough because she had gastric bypass because she had a weight problem because she was skinny, right? This is a perfect example. Along the way, she was super skinny with my oldest brother, and then she had a serious weight problem enough by the time she was had me that she had to get gastric, or thought she had to get gastric bypass. And now she can't eat enough because she's missing a big part of her stomach.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just saying, I watched all that go on, and I was the one because I was so mad at that system. I'm like, I'm not going to make the rest of my life be about going to these doctor's appointments and taking these different drugs.
Mm-hmm.
So I threw them in the garbage. I never went to any of the appointments, and I changed my diet. And I found carnivore. I prayed to God. God let me carnivore. Stayed in a prayer life. Stayed in carnivore. 22 months later, I'm a new person. I never took one of those drugs, not once. And I was taking a few drugs before that, but I got off all of them that day and I threw them all in the garbage. And I'm not saying to do this. This is not medical advice, and I'm not a doctor. What I'm telling you is what I actually did. And that is what I did. And I didn't go to any of those specialists, and I put it in God's hands. And I figured if I eat like God intended us to, if I can find that pathway, it's the best chance I have out of this. And that's exactly what it took me out of this. And it actually healed things that they said wouldn't heal. The drugs didn't. The drugs didn't do it for my dad. Didn't do it for my brother Ty. Didn't do it for my mom, But I'm watching carnivore do it. And so all that I'm saying is that when they give it all those names so that they can treat all those ailments that you have, where they're really just all they're really doing is giving names to symptoms and then treating symptoms, but it's not the root cause. It's not the root cause, and it's not the way out. And if you treat the symptoms and you don't treat the root cause, more symptoms are going to manifest, which is why you keep taking more and more medicines and you keep getting sicker and sicker because you are, my dad would always say, because these were the conversations we're having at the end of his life, but it's like the oil light goes off in your car, and instead of putting oil in your car, you clip the wires to the oil light so that you can't see it. That's all the treating the symptom is, didn't fix the oil problem. So what next? Now you're going to have an overheating problem. You're going to have a bearing go out. You're going to throw a rod, whatever, right? It's not fixing the core of the problem. You're just reacting to symptoms, and the doctors, here I go dropping names, but the system is to treat the symptoms, to distract us, to think that they're doing something, but all they are doing is treating these symptoms that are a manifestation of the main sickness because they're making money on all sides of it.
I honestly think we should end there. What you just said is it's not going to get better than that. That was the most solid apex. Like, I think we could come to the conclusion to. Yeah, Todd, you're a blessing of a person. I was so happy to meet you in Wyoming. I'm glad that we got this channel going.
For sure. I'm loving it, man. I look forward to Thursdays now every week.
Yeah. Like, I've been so busy. I know you've been busy, but you know what? It's like we agreed to Thursdays, and I just love that I have like blocked off this time to spend with Todd on Thursday evening. So it's cool. Thank you so much.
No worries. I appreciate it so much. We're going to shout out SBG because we are this Iron Sharpens Iron we have a bigger conversation. We have a Zoom call on SBG. It is behind a paywall, but we are doing this because it's a carnivore community. We don't get paid for being there. This is literally just labor of love that we're doing it to help men's health. But we want to do it in SBG because we need to help people stay on carnivore first before they'll feel the relief of their hormones and their brain chemistry and start to feel some relief from this, which I've tried doing outside of carnivore communities. And it's very tough because I can only talk to them for like an hour and they don't have a community where they can go to all week for support and direction. So we're doing this now in the SBG, which is Steak and Butter Gang. I have the link in my my Rumble description. I almost said YouTube, but my Rumble description. Also, I will be speaking with SBG, Bella, and the whole crew at Hack Your Health in Tampa, Florida. And so if you guys would like to go, or if we're going to be doing meetups and stuff, it's a 3-day event in Tampa, Florida. It's previously known as KetoCon. We were just there in Austin, Texas, this last end of May, 1st of June. It's an awesome conference. We're going to be there speaking. Bella's actually got 2 panels. I'm going to be on one of them with the whole SBG gang in Tampa. And if you would like to go, in the description of Rumble as well, or you can just use it, go to hackyourhealth.com 2025. And you can use coupon code Carnivore, all capital letters, and that gets you $100 off your tickets. And we're going to be doing some meetups and stuff there too when we are in Tampa. So, you got anything you need to get out there, Chad, before we call it a night?
No, I mean, go check out the links in my description, and hit me up if you have anything that you want to talk about carnivore wise. So that's it.
Absolutely. And please subscribe to me on Rumble. Chad, do you have a Rumble yet?
Not yet. I need to make one.
Okay. Subscribe to me on Rumble. It's the Carnivore Cure on Rumble. Because YouTube is censoring speech, and it's not going to get better, right? The bigger the carnivore community gets, the more people are getting healed, the more they're coming after us. So we got to go to free speech platforms, which right now Rumble and X are the 2 best ones. So support us on there if you guys don't mind. And we love you all. We'll see you next week, or hopefully we'll see you Saturday in the SPG.
Yep. Don't do drugs and don't eat vegetables.
Exactly. We'll see you next time.